Welcome to the Storycraft Cafe. Come in, grab a cup of your favorite beverage, and get ready to join the storytelling conversation. Storycraft Cafe is brought to you by Dabble, the ultimate cloud-based fiction writing software. Here we're going to bring together storytellers from all walks to encourage and empower you to craft your best story. Welcome to the Storycraft Cafe. Did you know that we have a social media site just for writers? You can find it at storycraft.cafe. You can meet other storycrafters that share the same hopes, dreams, struggles, and victories as you do. Join in the daily writing challenges, see when a new author interview is coming up, and join in the conversation and fun. Again, that's storycraft.cafe. We have a great show for you today as I welcome Beth Raymer to talk about dark comedy and telling stories about something we all have in common, family. They say truth is stranger than fiction. Well, sometimes that's true. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app and leave us a review if you don't mind. It helps others find us. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll drop a link in the show notes so you can find it easily. You can join me live as I conduct these author interviews, and you too can join in the conversation live as it happens. Now on to our show with Beth. Well, here we are again live in the Storycraft Cafe. I am your host, as always, Hank Garner. Today joining me is Beth Raymer. She is the author of a brand new book. It released 2 days ago on Tuesday of this week. It's called Fireworks Every Night, and this is such a ride of a book, I have to tell you. This is I can't even think of a word or a couple of words to sum this up. It is a ride for sure, and I think people are going to love this book. It is a fun and fascinating and heart-wrenching and heartbreaking and everything in between. It's excitement to the realities of life, and you so encapsulated a time and place in this book, and I love it so much, and I know other people are too. Welcome to the show, Beth.
Hi, hey, thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you. Beth, I like to start the show with a fun question sometimes, just to kind of set the tone. What is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
Oh gosh. I became a writer so late in my life. I don't even know if I have a memory. I think, I moved to New York City when I was 24, and I moved here from Las Vegas. I was not a writer or anything, and I met friends. A lot of my friends that I happened to meet, I moved here to box in the Golden Globes, and I met a circle of people who were all artists. A lot of them were writers, and I loved hanging out with them, and I was a reader. One person who became a friend of mine, Robert Annecy, he was actually my sparring partner. I had read his memoir, The Gloves, and very first person, just this is life in amateur boxing. And I loved that book. And when I moved to New York City, I got in touch with him, and he became my sparring partner. He took me to parties. He introduced me to New York. And I think I saw the writing life through him. And I was kind of like, maybe I could do this. If Robert did it, maybe I can do it. So I think that was when I had some kind of energy in my head going toward being a writer.
I love it. Did you ever consider yourself a storyteller or a collector of stories before that point? Because, looking back over your bio, you've had, a roller coaster ride of a life, which, a lot of us, if you're a writer, I have known a couple of people, and we've done over 1,500 writer interviews with authors, and very seldom do you interact with a person who says, I've only always wanted to be a writer. That's the only thing I could ever imagine myself doing. And my sole purpose was to do that. That is a very minuscule amount of people that can say that. Most people, it's a bit of a circuitous route that, you collect experiences over here and you collect experiences over here, and all of the things that you've experienced kind of coalesce into this gumbo that makes the writing life. Did you ever consider yourself as like someone who collected stories, or were you ever that person at the party that's like, oh, let me tell you this story?
I wasn't that person, but most of my friends, they kind of referred to me as like an experience junkie. And I was kind of a loner in my 20s. I was moving around a lot: Las Vegas, New York. I lived in Costa Rica, Curacao, all over the Caribbean, and I was really by myself. I was working in sports gambling at the time. And so I had my community of gamblers, but they were much different from me. They were men, much older guys. So I was really the only woman, and I was always writing to my friends, and I would write emails at the time. I can't believe how many emails I would write. I would get home from a long day and like write this really passionate email to a whole bunch of different people. And a lot of my friends kept those emails. They're like, Beth, you should use this. You need to do something with this. And so I think, friends would read my stories, and then they kind of guided me. I did hit a wall in my late 20s where I really had no idea what I was going to do for a career. I had this resume that it very much read like a rap sheet. I mean, it was just illegal activity after illegal activity. And I would try to apply for jobs. Like, I had a lot of my gambling friends who were like, Beth, just work on Wall Street. I can get you a job. You'll be great. But then I would look at the lifestyle and I was like, there is no way I'm going to make it in corporate America. There is no way I'm going to get on that train every day and get off on the Wall Street station and sweat over numbers for the rest of my life. And so finally, I was very thankful. Again, I had friends kind of guide me into the arts, even though, of course, their lives were completely degenerate as well. And they were also poor. But there was something a little more like, I felt like I could almost handle the degeneracy and poverty that comes along with the writing life much more than I could handle the degeneracy and that all-consuming kind of shallow Wall Street life.
Your experiences in Las Vegas culminated in the writing of a book that then became a very popular movie, Lay the Favorite. Tell me about that experience. Well, first, how did you wind up in Las Vegas doing what you did? And then how did you take that experience and decide to write about it?
Oh, gosh. I moved to Las Vegas when I was 23. I had been a stripper in Florida, and I had some bad experiences. I mean, they weren't even that. They were really bad. I didn't think they were that bad at the time. But again, friends were like, hey, this seems a little dangerous. And they're like, you know what? You should do something else. And I was living in Florida. I grew up in Florida. I went to community college in Florida. I went to Florida State. And I was like, I want to get out of Florida. So I had this idea to move to Las Vegas and be a cocktail waitress. So I moved there. It was very hard for me to get a job. They were unionized. I didn't realize all that you had to go through to be a cocktail waitress. So I just started waiting tables. And I happened to meet this young woman. She was about my age. She was in her early 20s, and she was a masseuse for a gambler. And she said, look, I know this guy who runs this gambling office. You should let me introduce the two of you. And so I went to his office, and this ended up being this guy, Dinky, who was like the biggest, sports gambler in Las Vegas. So very quickly, I became his right-hand woman. And then before I know it, I was like going offshore and going to New York and working for bookies. And that was about 3 years, and kind of like stripping, it too kind of became dangerous. Even though same thing, I think it had been dangerous all along, but it took like 3 years for the awareness to like kick in. And once again, friends were like, Beth, what about this? Why don't you try to go into writing? And I was a reader. I love reading memoirs. Like I mentioned, Robert Annecy, The Gloves, was an inspiration of mine. A woman, Lily Barana, wrote a memoir called Strip City, where she kind of just writes about her last year of stripping in all these strip clubs across America. So I liked this notion of using my life, my experience to just write a first-person account that explores a subculture. And I thought, wow, that actually sounds kind of easy. I think I could do that. It wasn't the most ambitious project in the world. And so that's when I was dating a reporter, and he had gone to Columbia, and he said, let's, use your emails that you've written me, and let's just use that for your application. And I got into Columbia. And very quickly, I learned how to write a book. I learned how to write a book proposal, because at Columbia, I went to the MFA nonfiction writing program. You learn a lot about writing. But it wasn't until I took a book writing seminar, Sam Friedman taught it in the journalism school at Columbia, that I learned how to like sell a book. I learned the business of publishing. And that allowed me to sell the proposal of Lay the Favorite very quickly. I got the agent, the publisher, I sold the film rights. That all happened very, very quickly. The screenwriter finished the screenplay of Lay the Favorite before I finished the book. So that was, that's how that world works. There's not, they are on a whole different type of energy and focus in Hollywood.
And writing a memoir is very different from writing a piece of fiction. Well, for a number of reasons, but we'll just talk about the publishing side for a second. You actually sell a proposal for a memoir before you've written all of the book. And whereas fiction, most times when you sell a novel, the agent and the publisher, they pretty much want a finished book before they make a decision on it. So that had to be different. That okay, I've sold this thing, but it doesn't exactly exist yet. Now I've got work to do.
It adds some pressure, certainly with Lay the Favorite, where it all happened so quickly. I had never published anything before. But I actually sold the novel on proposal.
Nice.
Just because Lay the Favorite did well, and I wanted to keep momentum, and my editor at the time and publisher, Julie Grau, it was at Spiegel and Grau then. It doesn't exist anymore, or it does, but it's not under the Random House umbrella anymore. But they said, just come up, write about what you want your novel to be. And I did. I wrote like a 10-page document, and that's how I sold it. So I've never gone through the process of writing something first and then trying to sell it.
I've often wondered, when someone has such success with their first book that they've written, Lay the Favorite was a wild success. It was a great movie. And when you go to follow that up, when it's come out and you get all the praise and the accolades, and the movie comes out and everyone loves it, and then a few months later, the lull kind of happens, and, there you're sitting again with, what do I do now? What is that feeling like, having that kind of success right out of the gate? And then everyone starts asking, well, Beth, what are you going to do now?
Well, I think that's why, I'm a very just antsy person. I mean, right when Lay the Favorite came out in 2010, and I sold my novel, I think it was 2011 or 2012. I don't know, but it was very quickly. I didn't let myself get to that point. I just did it again. I just sold my third book. I anticipate that I might dive into that, oh my God, all I'm doing is staring at my computer all day, or whatever it is. I don't want to get there. So I always make sure I have something to work on, something to sell, something to look forward to. It's kind of like success and failure are not that different. No matter what, you have to keep going.
Right.
You just have to. You have no choice. So whether you have a huge success, it doesn't matter. People forget about it very quickly.
Yeah.
So you just have to kind of plan ahead. You do have to plan ahead for just how to keep your career going and your sanity.
And we have a saying that we use a lot. The blank page is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter how much success you've had in the past. When you sit down to write a new book, everyone stares at the same exact blank page.
Exactly.
And that's a humbling, but it can be very empowering at the same time. That I have just as much opportunity now with this new story that hasn't been realized, as everyone does.
Yeah. And plus there's the feeling like I've been here before.
Right.
So that gives you some confidence. Be like, I went through a lot with Lay the Favorite. I wrote it fast and stuff, but there were some roadblocks along the way, and I got around them, and I will do it again. So you have to stay confident.
Yeah.
You also have to stay delusional. I think it's those two things, confidence and delusion, that you just have to really keep that brew going.
Your new book, Fireworks Every Night, is your first work of pure fiction. Do I have that right? Telling a story that is fiction, but it feels very true. If that makes any sense. I don't know, but I'm guessing that you drew pretty heavily from some personal experiences. Um, that experience versus Lay the Favorite, where you're telling your story and these are your experiences. Um, how different is that? Going to the well and mining out your personal experiences versus writing where maybe you start with a feeling that you had or an experience you had, but then you embellish and tack on this or you strip away that, and then it becomes something different. What's the difference in your writer's mind between telling the true facts of what happened with you in your life versus just making it up?
The truth is I approached Fireworks Every Night just as I approached nonfiction. It is very heavily based on my upbringing and my life. So for many years and many drafts, I did what I always do in nonfiction. I take my recorder, I take my iPhone, I record. I recorded my family members, I interviewed them, I interviewed sister's ex-boyfriend. I went through everybody, like, to get a hold of the atmosphere. I moved back to Florida just to get the atmospherics. I do what I always do, which is almost like this, it's like method acting, but it's writing. I don't know I'm not someone who could invent something from nothing. I come from I really use my own life. So that's how I approached it. But with fiction, because it's fiction, at some point you do need to take the leap of imagination to break the story open.
Yeah.
So that part was very hard for me. And my editor was very helpful. Andrea Walker at Random House, she was like, we need to frame the book. That's when she said, it can't just, for a long time, it was a traditional coming of age story. Very much like We the Animals by Justin Torres. That's what I wanted, a very small, traditional coming of age story. And my editor was like, no, let's open it. Let's do the dual timelines. Let's bring in present day Cece, our main character. Let's put her in the here and now. Have more fun with this. Make this bigger. Open up some themes. Let's give her a job. Where is she in life? So I was like, okay, I can do that. So, and even though I still borrowed from my life heavily, even with that, it did free me up in terms of theme and fun. I gave her the job working at the zoo, which brings in this whole theme of survival and the animals and the wildlife. So I mean, that's how I approached it. I don't think I'm very much I'm not a purist fiction writer. I'm just
Well, the dual timelines were so brilliantly done in the book, and the book opens um, with the first thing that you encounter in the book is this harp. And we learn over the next couple pages that this is the eve of Cece's wedding, and she is in this home of her in-laws, and there's this object there that really sets a tone for that portion of the book, and using that object as kind of an anchor, that was I I kind of thought about this over and over again, that this object is the first thing you encounter in this book, and it's at such diametric opposition to the other
yeah,
timeline. It really I'm struggling for words, but it really serves as a contrast piece, maybe is the
yeah.
what was the idea behind this object that you opened the book with?
Well, so CC, it's a great question. Let me think about how to answer it. My book, there is a lot of imagery in the book, and I think I was very focused on if on the stark juxtaposition. I wanted it to be as stark as possible between Cece, this family she's moving into, what her new life is about to be like, and where she's coming from. So I thought like the harp was just such a image of just wealth and the carefreeness that comes with wealth, and the beauty, and just but also kind of a little bit, oh God, what's the word? I don't know. There's something like, if I had Marie Antoinette's harp in my living room, I think I would be a little bit embarrassed. I'd be a little bit
Yeah,
embarrassed, but they're not. It's this beautiful object. It travels to all these different museums and conservatories. And like everything, they're just not the most self-conscious people, and they're very giving, and they're into the arts. And there's just such an acceptance about who they are in their lifestyle, where Cece is just coming from a place of absolute shame. Um,
right.
so that, and then we go to chapter 2 right after the harp and the engagement party, and the first image you see of Cece's upbringing, it's the tray of orange samples, and like there's flies on them.
Right.
So it's also like, okay, so very stark in the compare and contrast. And
It,
this is a whole new world we're entering.
what's funny to me is Cece almost seems to be more of a snob than the people that you would expect to be snobbish. They're very
You're
open and
so right.
welcoming and very giving, and just salt of the earth people. And then Cece is so full of shame. Like, I think that's
Yes.
a perfect, that she almost becomes a snob.
I
And
know.
I
She's
thought
a
that was a
snob about her
beautiful,
poverty.
yeah,
Yes.
that tells us so much about ourselves when like, oh, this is, seeing that played out that way really makes you look at yourself and your own experiences to, like, oh my gosh, do I come across that way? I hope I don't,
Yeah, I know.
It- it's crazy. It's crazy, but it was beautifully drawn. It was beautifully drawn.
Thank you.
The cast of characters in this book are phenomenal, and I think central to the cast of characters is Florida itself as a character. I live in the deep South, close to Florida, but not in Florida. But we
Where
travel to
where do you
Florida. What's that?
where do you live?
Well, I live in South Mississippi,
Okay.
so but very close.
Uh-huh.
But we travel to Florida quite a bit, and there's something about crossing that state line
Yeah.
where you know all the memes over the last few years of Florida Man, are hilarious to me. But all great memes are really dabble in a little bit of truth.
Oh, yeah.
That's what makes them resonate so well, and it's kind of funny, that it's obviously an exaggeration, but a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of truth there.
Oh, yeah.
But the way you represent Florida in the 90s is what was your idea about representing this place the way you did so that it feels like, it's a character in the book?
I mean, I think that was just a priority of mine. I feel very loyal. I feel devoted to Florida. I mean, it shaped me. I love Florida. I feel like I lived in New York now for I am a New Yorker, but I have this very strong inner Floridian
Yeah.
that I'm proud of, and that I defend the state of Florida. So I wanted to just get it right, and I wanted to capture the wildness, the beauty. It was so unhinged even back then, but it was the starting of everything.
Yeah.
It's the starting of where we are now in the state of Florida. You see the there's this part where Cece's in school, and they have portables. Did you go to school in portables in Mississippi?
Like the temporary buildings.
Yeah, the like chicken coops, like on the I don't even on the cinder blocks, and you're like
Yes.
sinking
Yes.
into the swamp
Yeah,
while you burn math.
we live in a part of the country where we get lots of tornadoes, and
Okay.
there were several that damaged buildings as I was coming up, and so you would have these portable buildings that they would bring in while they repaired things, and yeah, there was a lot of that.
Right. So see exactly. So Cece is in one of those, and at her school, and she's like in middle school at this point, and an alligator starts, coming up the handicap ramp to the portable. And the kids are all like, "Oh my God, the gator is coming!" And
Yeah.
the teacher's like, kids, this is Florida. You have a better chance of dying by legal execution than you do a gator attack. And that sets the tone, because by the time
Right.
Cece's in high school, she does have classmates who are on death row. She does have one that's on trial facing the electric chair, and like that teacher was right. The larger force at work in Florida is the values that are coming from this very distinct, governance than it
Yeah.
is the concern of the gators and the little wild loony things that go on there.
It's interesting to me to think about the family that we inherit. None of us get to choose what family we're born into, or who our relatives, are or were, or what things we inherited from them. And Cece's shame of her family and her past really comes full circle for her in this book. And there's a lot of from the mother who is in her 30s going on 17, was a brilliant way to do that. When, were these themes, I guess what I want to know is, were you thinking about these themes from the beginning, or was it like a lot of books where you write what you're feeling, and then at the end you look back and say, "Oh, there's all these themes that have cropped up in here. I didn't even know I was wrestling with these things or thinking about them until I wrote them." Like there's some very strong themes in the book, but did you know about? Did you
No,
purposefully pursue them going in, or did they emerge in the writing?
they emerged. I am not, I not only am I not a big idea, like I have a hard time. Like I remember at Columbia, some of my classmates were so good at like, I'm going to write this story and it's going to explore this, this, and this. And I'm like, God, how do they know? How do they know that? Like it takes me 2 full drafts before I can see some cohesiveness in terms of themes. Um,
Right.
I think the difference is a lot of my classmates at Columbia, they had been in therapy, they had studied English, they had been in honors English, places where you start training to like be reflective and think in those terms, where I did not come from that kind of world. I was just coming from, here's a crazy story, that's just
Right.
very soap opera.
Right.
So yes, those themes just all emerged. I think it's like if you just try to tell the story and not think of those big things. Or at least that's what I do. It's a little easier for me to just get the story on the page. That is the focus.
Yeah. There are a lot of topics in the book that are that could be very difficult. There's a lot of heavy stuff in this book, but at the same time, Cece is a little snarky. She has a bit of an attitude, and she never seems, especially young Cece, she never really tends to take things too seriously, even though they're serious all around her. Did is that a reflection of you and how you saw the world, or what was the idea of kind of coming up with the character of Cece and how she would interact with the world and the circumstances around her?
Well, I think I just wanted to really show what it's like to grow up in extreme dysfunction. And when you're doing that and you're kind of in a place like Loxahatchee, it's the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And you're just going through life. Like, you don't really have time to think about things. No one's sitting down and teaching you words to attach to what you're experiencing. You're just there with your little 15, 16-year-old brain being like, okay, what can I do? School's going to be so embarrassing today. How am I going to get through it? Can I somehow steal the car? You're thinking, you've got like the brain of an alligator. It's the size of a pea, so sometimes things do hit her, but usually she's just anticipating how to get through the next day. So I don't think Cece really is able to reflect and make sense of her narrative and her past until she's in her 30s. I think only then does she allow herself the time, and she has the experience now of another side of America, that she's able to say, oh, what I experienced was really fucked up. I think that's very true for anybody who goes through a dysfunctional home. Like she is.
Titles for books are fascinating because you've got this book that's 80,000-90,000 words, and we're going to sum this up with a quippy phrase, or something that's going to tell people on the shelf what this book is about. Fireworks Every Night is a fascinating title to me. Where did it come from, and what do you think it encapsulates for the book?
Well, it came from a brochure that my father had when we the state of Florida did this campaign in the 80s to get people not to just vacation in Florida, but to live there. So my dad somehow had this brochure, and it was I wish I could find it. It's almost like not to be believed, but it really had things just like women windsurfing. It was still a vacation brochure. It's not like they showed homes or anything, or schools. It was still vacation Florida, but it was like, hey, you don't just have to visit here. You can come and stay, and we have really good seafood, and you can drive on the beach, and there's fireworks every night. And I remember it was like sitting on the counter for a while. And I remember the picture was like just this generic picture of fireworks. Yeah. And that just always, that stayed with me. And so I just thought it would be a great title because it captures the thrill. Fireworks every night, it's so thrilling. It's so sexy, but it's like to really experience fireworks every night is enough to drive you mad.
Yeah. Well, and and it also, fireworks, if you're talking about interpersonal relationships and family, fireworks are not always a good thing, and when you think about, being in a family where there's fireworks every night, that can be stressful and, something that you would want to move across the country to avoid and not invite your mother to your wedding, because there were fireworks every night. That's
right.
It was a great dichotomy. There's a great dichotomy in the title, I thought.
Thank you.
Well, Fireworks Every Night is available everywhere now. It came out a couple of days ago. Go visit your local bookstore, support local books, and pick up a copy. Or we're going to put links to it in the show notes where you can grab it from Amazon or Audible. Have you listened to the audiobook of it yet, Beth?
No, did you?
I haven't yet, but
Yeah,
I was thinking about picking it up for the holiday weekend coming up. I would like to experience the book all over again, with someone acting it out. So
Yeah.
but we'll put links in the show notes. If people are just discovering you and want to follow along with, what all's coming up with Beth Raymer, is there a place where they can connect with you online and follow along?
I mean, I'm on Twitter, Beth Raymer, and I have my Instagram, which is Beth Ann Raymer, ANNE. I need to get better at social media. I'm kind of
Well,
very shy when it comes to social media.
Yeah. Well, we'll link those up to make it easier for folks to find you.
Okay.
Beth, it's been so much fun chatting. Thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was fun.
That's our episode for today. There's so much more to come as we talk with authors about the craft of writing, but also the business of publishing. Be sure to subscribe to the Storycraft Cafe podcast in your favorite podcast app to never miss an episode. The Storycraft Cafe is made possible by Dabble. Writing a book is challenging. Your writing tool shouldn't be. Dabble is an easy-to-use online writing tool packed with helpful features that allow beginning novelists and published authors to create amazing stories. Visit us at dabblewriter.com and start your free trial. Thanks for listening.